Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the Switch Dx³ webinar. So it's a good morning, I guess, to the West Coast and just afternoon on the East, if you're joining us from over there. Switch Dx³, the first step to digital facilities management. I'm Peter Rake, your webinar host, and I'm the Global Director of Integration for Switch Automation. And that means I work with our teams and our customers closely to integrate their systems to the Switch platform. So I'm excited to share with you today a new feature to the platform. If this is your first time or your first introduction to Switch Automation, what is it we do and who are we? We're a IoT platform for building systems and devices. So we connect, to anything there. And as the slide shows, whether that's metering, access control, IoT sensors, building management systems, elevators, and so on. That's what the Switch platform does. We aggregate all that information up and give building owners and operators a single pane of glass to manage and operate their portfolios more efficiently. What we're seeing is our enterprise customers want to digitize their portfolio, and by doing that, they engage, the Switch platform. So the Switch platform, in a real brief summary, is it's an analytics engine. Could be a network operations center, and we're centrally hosting all of your data in one place from all of those subsystems I mentioned earlier. So that's the Switch platform. What we're finding is our customers do want a single pane of glass that leverages everything they've already got installed across their building portfolio, aggregated up. So not every building is exactly the same. They have all different systems in them, compatible or not, but it's a diverse range of. So they don't just simply have a single BMS across their hundreds of buildings that they might own. So we're adding this scalable infrastructure that can be built upon as they go along on their smart buildings journey. I'm going to introduce the Switch Gateway, which is the engine behind the Switch Dx³ part of the product, which I'll be featuring today in this webinar. We're using the Dell hardware. We collaboration with Dell and the security and the might of what Dell brings to the party on this little solid state gateway device. Power over Ethernet, so it's really nice, especially for IT people, with power over Ethernet switches and infrastructure. You can reboot it remotely, and it's a great little small form factor. The three main ways of connecting to the internet is through either a SIM card, 4G data plan, obviously Ethernet, and also Wi-Fi capabilities. So it's got multi ways to connect to the internet. Just to, I guess, tee up, what we're going to talk about today is that we do have, all of these integration drivers written. So the gateway communicates to all of these edge devices, whether it's Schneider, Honeywell. I'm sure you're familiar with all of these brands and logos. So most of these integrations have just been through our customers, and our driver development team are continually improving and enhancing this integration ability of the Switch platform. So it's certainly by no means the be all, but I know you're probably all familiar with a lot of those logos that are up there. So introducing Switch Dx³, which is the 3 or the cubed is all about digital device discovery. So what we're doing is just making things easier to connect the myriad of systems that are in buildings, and they may not every system is going to be compatible from day one, but what we've now built and the Switch development team have built is a tool that now can give you true insight as to what is compatible on my network today. We often have our clients, when they engage at the Switch team to get them stood up and start their smart buildings journey, assume that they've got something, and then we ultimately discover that yeah, no ability. So they may not have BACnet IP, they might not have Modbus IP. So all those protocols that bounce around in the industry, some people think they've got it and they actually don't. And we're often defending, well, how do we connect? How do we solve this problem? And that it ultimately ends up being, well, we've got to engage, your vendors or potentially the manufacturer. So putting the gateway on now and giving this user interface is actually giving you essentially a digital audit of your building. Is it compatible today? Is it not? And can I start somewhere? Because up till now, I'm not really familiar with anything that can do this, because everyone sort of just assumes, and then their BMS looks after everything else. We're starting to pull data out of these buildings now. We've got to start somewhere, and actually now we can do this digital discovery and understand what's there. So we can really ensure that your building is ready for real-time data collection from those systems. So that could be, like I mentioned earlier, it could be a building management system, could be a sub-metering system, access control, lighting systems, and so on. So this then stands up and creates the foundation. Once we've done this, digital device discovery, we can build the foundation now of importing all these sensor points, applying fault detection rules, starting to do data analytics, potentially control, the underlying systems, because we are a bi-directional control platform at the same time. So we certainly can affect the environment remotely. And so all of those things stood up. It gives people and the operations team especially visibility into the IP devices. So we're really determining your smart building readiness for a commercial building portfolio. And I'm just going to jump into the demo. So this is the UI. This is one I prepared earlier. Really, these scans can take, anywhere from minutes to a few hours. If, anyone on the call today is familiar with BACnet discoveries or just general network discoveries, they can, typically an IP network discovery doesn't take very long, but when you're discovering BACnet devices. So this is a building in my home nation of Sydney, and this is actually a really good case. So this is a great example of a building that actually was ready to go. The BACnet IP was already connected. We connected the gateway in. The gateway does require outbound internet connection, so just to be clear, it's not going to run just locally on the premise. It does need an outbound internet connection, which is secure. We've had penetration tests from Fortune 100 companies. So it's a very secure device that we're putting onto this network. And then once we're connected, we just run the discovery. Now, the cool thing about this discovery is it is configurable for the end user. So it's not switched on by default. You actually can, run it once. You can schedule it to run every hour if you're initially commissioning buildings or bringing systems online. And the other thing you do is maybe just set it to run once a day, because you want to understand what has been connected to my network, maybe what's been removed from my network potentially. So some of this functionality that I'm going to show you today is in the realms of IT people, and the operations teams don't necessarily see these sorts of things. So you'll see across the top bar, this is a BACnet system network that we've discovered. We've found a total of 87,056 sensor points on this network across 900 devices and manufacturers. So the cool thing that we've done here is we've confirmed and essentially validated that this building is ready to be pulled in, and to the Switch platform and apply fault detection and diagnosis. So on the left-hand side here, we've got a bit of a network health check, because anyone that's done any building systems integrations before will know that any latency on the communications bus is problematic, especially for a visible layer like switch automation, where we're charting, we're doing fault detection. Obviously, data quality is very, very important. So if we're getting any latency on controllers, then that's going to compromise the sensor information that's coming up to the platform. So you can see here in this list, this is a reliable controls installation. We can see by the equipment model, the MAC address, some response times here that are 5 seconds, 2 seconds. So, there's a little bit of latency in this network. We can obviously, do things like filter the top 25 and the bottom. So it's quite functional to be able to filter this. But the nice thing now is that this empowers building owners and operators to really share this with their vendors, because you're not necessarily looking after this subsystem yourself. You're going to rely on trusted, installation partners and systems integrators. But what you can do with this, if you imagine this across your entire building portfolio, is that building by building, you can work collaboratively with your vendors and support teams and iron out any of these communications issues. So sometimes this could, be a really quick fix. Other times it might be actually installing new hardware, running new communications cables, and so on. So this network health is really, a great way to actually come in and do, the initial audit. The next one is really then all about discovering by the smart building readiness. What systems have we found in the device discovery? So we've found some central plant equipment here. You can see we've found some Danfoss drives, more reliable controllers, some Schneider electric metering here, Cisco switches. There's even, I know I scanned the list earlier, there's some Caroma smart tapware, there's some Dakin. So you can see here it's quite a comprehensive list. Yeah, there's the Caroma smart bathroom ware in there. There's a VMware machine. So you can see here we've done, a full, essentially IP discovery, but we've also identified integration ports to BACnet and Modbus there through discovery of the manufacturers like Schneider and obviously reliable controls. So that really stands up now. This client knows that they're ready for the next steps. The other thing that's nice, which is typically not visible, especially when you think about connectivity across multiple buildings, is really bubbling up all of the firmware versions that are on these underlying subsystems. So you'll see here in this list, we've got the reliable controllers. The Mac Pro Air there has 5 different versions of firmware. Now, this may be because of circumstances on the site. I'm not 100% sure, but often older versions of firmware either present potentially a cyber risk, or it might be just unlocking some new features that are part of a simple firmware upgrade. So again, empowering operations teams to work with their vendors and get this ability to update the firmware. So in this case, it might be prudent to update everything to version 7.4 here. And now you can validate this by running this scanner again, and then you'll see that all the Mac Pro Air devices are now on version 7.4. So really powerful and puts it in the hands of, the operations teams again. And the other thing that we do is really scan, because we're doing this on the IP network. We're looking for potential vulnerabilities in the ports. We're not testing whether these ports have exposure to the internet because we're internally on this network, but what we can find and highlight to operations teams, and maybe they get some validation from their IT teams, is if these ports are exposed out to the internet. Now, a lot of people, probably on the call are very familiar with some of these ports. Port 80, is typically a web port to configure hardware. So, you're going to see that that's open. We're also going to see some secure ones, SSH ports, 443, HTTPS. So we're actually doing this discovery. So again, you're doing this sort of essentially a digital audit of all things being, on the platform. So that's really the quick insight of the actual, platform and the visualization that you'll get when you connect to the building from the Switch platform. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, putting on a gateway and you're seeing nothing, this report would be pretty boring. But again, this now empowers people to start somewhere. So it may be simply that you don't have, IP connectivity to your BMS maybe, or you need to install a controller or a translator because it's a proprietary BMS as an example. So this is a great way to start. It's part of the Switch product offering when you buy the gateway. So you get this out of the box by default. And I hope you found this brief webinar informative. I'll just jump back to the slide deck and check out if we've got any questions, if we've had any questions along the way. Okay, we've got a couple here. Thank you. I'll read this one out. Is the Switch DX dashboard and its network scanning of capabilities separate from Switch's software as a service subscription? It is actually indeed a great question. Where able to, with I guess the hardware, we're able to just give you actually a web login to the device discovery. It's not part of the SaaS platform. It's just one-time buy when you buy the gateway. So it's a great way to actually then put it in your building, stand it up, and it's costing you nothing from that day. So now you can work with your vendors, you can work with your suppliers, manufacturers, whatever you need to do to start to then open up the protocols that you need to have the compatibility to do all the data analytics and the things that the Switch platform does, but it's not costing you a cent while you stand it all up. And then you can obviously continue to run this scanner as often as you need to as your systems come online. Another question from Rachel, thanks, is the Switch DX a cybersecurity software solution? It is not. I mean, we're not going to stand here and say that we're a cybersecurity auditing tool. We do highlight some potential vulnerabilities, but that's not what the Switch platform's done to do. It's not doing a penetration test of your network, but it can, indicate potential vulnerabilities that could be validated by your IT team. So no, it's not a standalone cybersecurity. It's more of just a digital discovery or digital device discovery tool, finding out what's on your network. Another one here from Ben. Under what circumstances would you consider commercial portfolio ineligible for a smart building program? That's a really good question. I think it's probably common sense to most people on the call, but ineligible buildings for us would be more that something that doesn't have a BMS or is a really old building that's got pneumatic controls. So, but in saying that, I mean, from my attitude, I really like to get people stood up and get them, get data from your building, no matter what the size of it. So companies like Monet, if you've heard of those guys, and even eGauge, who's a local Colorado company, they provide very cost-effective solutions for wireless connectivity. So you can get little wireless temperature sensors, wireless humidity sensors. So if your building doesn't have a BMS and you want to understand supply air temperatures from air conditioning units that don't have BACnet as its communication protocol, then you can buy sensors off the shelf, connect them to the Switch platform and get underway and do operational analytics. So there is no real barriers to it, but some buildings are going to be ineligible, especially older ones with proprietary BMSs and pneumatic controllers. Okay, and then, well, yeah, great question actually. So once the Switch digital discovery is done, what's the next steps? Well, for us, we're obviously encouraging people to then import all the sensor points. We saw 80-some thousand points on the demo I just gave, and we'll import typically 20 to 25,000 of those points to give value to our client, running fault detection analytics. We'll do retro commissioning audits. We'll do, taking them to a continuous commissioning strategy. So that's the next steps. It's building up user interfaces and giving them true insight into the operations, the underlying operations of that building, and bringing up then dashboards for the community potentially, and just operations teams in general. And you think about this across your entire building portfolio, you've now got this central place where you're monitoring all of your assets from this single dashboard. Network Operations Center is not a stretch with the Switch platform. So that looks like it's all of our questions for now. So I did say almost 20 minutes or so earlier, so I'll give you a couple of minutes back. I appreciate everyone joining the call, and until the next webinar, thank you.